Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. I'm Ryan Aber, joined by Jason Kersey. Jason, for us, it's a big day because we're podcasting for the first time at our new downtown offices. It's fantastic in here, but there's big news on the Sooner front. We thought we'd probably only do one podcast this week, but of course, pretty much as soon as we got done the other day, the news comes out that Jerry Montgomery, Oklahoma's defensive line coach, who'd been such a big part of not only the recruiting class for them the last couple of years, but also in developing defensive line talent, was off to the NFL, headed to the Green Bay Packers to be a defensive assistant. First of all, how surprising was this news for you?
Well, it literally came out of nowhere. I mean, we were podcasting and talking about staff changes, the finalized staff. I think we thought we were done with this stuff for the year, and then like you said, I mean, not too long after we finished, this news broke, and so it's shocking. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I don't think that OU even saw it coming, frankly, because I don't think they would have announced their finalized staff. And that's what they said in the press release, the finalized staff, if they knew Montgomery was going to leave the next day. And it hurts. There's no doubt about it. It hurts recruiting. It hurts for the kids that Jerry Montgomery recruited in this class. And it hurts defensive line. I mean, he was doing a great job developing those guys. I mean, it's a shocker. It really is. It's not so much a shocker that he got another job and left. It's the timing of it that's the most shocking.
Yeah, the timing of it and the job that he took elsewhere to go to the Green Bay Packers. He's not going to be, their defensive line coach. He's not going to be, one of the, so-called premier assistant coaching jobs. He's essentially going to be a quality control coach. I guess a defensive front assistant is what they've said. But surprising, I don't think you can hold it against him for, giving a shot at the NFL a try. But it's certainly maybe taking a step back to be able to move forward in your career.
Yeah, I think that's right. And another thing I think that people may forget is that, Jerry Montgomery is from Iowa. He's from that part of the country, so in a way it sort of makes sense that maybe he'd want to get back to that part of the country, but also get to the NFL. But it is a step back. I don't know how much defensive front assistants make in the NFL, but I would say there's a decent shot that he will take a pay cut for this job because
I'd be shocked if he didn't.
OU was paying him in the $350 range last year. He got the promotion to co-defensive coordinator. So you got to believe he was going to probably get up over $400,000 for this coming year. So it's unbelievable, and I think it's devastating for a lot of fans and for a lot of these players. And now Bob Stoops has another coaching hire to make with spring football, less than a month away.
Yeah, you talk about devastating for the players. Obviously, the ones who first come to mind are the guys who just signed. Guys like Ricky DeBerry, Neville Gallimore, who Jerry Montgomery really recruited hard and helped land them in Norman. Those are certainly big blows. But the first player that came to mind for me as I was thinking about Jerry Montgomery leaving was Charles Tapper. I mean, this is a guy who loved Jerry Montgomery and what he did and what he brought to this program, but also the other guy he loved on this staff was Bobby Jack Wright, the guy who brought him to Norman and he had grown so close to over the last few years. And now in the span of a month, he's lost both of those guys.
Yeah, and that is tough. And this is a guy who I think flirted with the idea of going to the NFL himself this year after the bowl game, and he decided to come back, and then to have the two coaches that really do mean the most to him are now gone. That does have to hurt for him, and I think so much now will depend on who they get to replace him. There's some good options out there, but there's also it's a little late in the game now. Stoops did hire Jerry Montgomery in February 20.
And we've seen plenty of coaches who have taken jobs and moved up, take another job before the next season even got there. I mean, we saw a couple of that happen a time or two. I think Jay Boulware was one of them, right? Who had another job but hadn't coached an actual game yet before he got the OU job.
Yeah.
You mentioned one the other day that I didn't remember, and that's Jay Norvell actually being on Bob Stoops' staff before. Very briefly before he went back to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen from time to time, and I think that they might have to do something like that for, with I mean, Calvin Thibodeau was a guy I think a lot of people tossed around a couple of years ago when they hired Jerry Montgomery. Calvin Thibodeau was a possibility. He was coaching at Tulsa at the time, and he left Tulsa when Bill Blankenship was fired this last year, and now he just was hired last month at Kansas. So he's Kansas's defensive line coach for now, but I think there's definitely a chance that they're going to try to get him from Kansas. He's a young guy. I would presume he would be a good recruiter at a place like OU, being an alum, being a former player. So I mean that's a pretty obvious candidate. I think I think they've got Corey Callens right there on staff. 36 years old and a graduate assistant. He doesn't have a whole lot of time left to be a graduate assistant, so he's gonna have to find something else at some point. And
he's a guy who earned quite a bit of praise during this recruiting season for the job he did filling in for some of the other coaches who weren't yet on board.
Yeah, he got to recruit off campus and did well. So I definitely think he could be a candidate. And the other thing about Corey Callens, some people may say, well, OU shouldn't be promoting graduate assistants. They need to go find a home run hire. Well, Corey Callens is older than a typical graduate assistant. He spent a long time on the strength and conditioning staff, so he's been around the program. He knows it. He loves it. And he's been working with Jerry Montgomery. So the two of them are, I'm sure he learned a lot of things from him. So, and he knows the system. So I definitely think Corey Callens could be a candidate.
A couple names that you mentioned in your post the other day, breaking down some of the people who might be available for this that were really interesting to me was Chris Kiffin, first of all, the Ole Miss recruiting coordinator. He's done a fantastic job there, sort of a lot like Jerry Montgomery, bringing in guys not only at his position but across the board and coaching their defensive line. They've obviously had some really good players down there the last couple of years. I know that name might make people cringe a little bit because he's the younger brother of Lane Kiffin and all the baggage that comes along with him. But Chris Kiffin has proven to be a fantastic recruiter and a solid developer. And then Craig Kuligowski from Missouri, a little bit older than Chris Kiffin, but their defensive line coach, and he's done a fantastic job at developing those guys the last couple of years. We saw it with Michael Sam and Coney Eli and those guys a couple of years ago. But some intriguing names that could be possibility for Stoops to look for.
Yeah, I would imagine that the guy at Missouri isn't probably a serious candidate just because he's been with Gary Pinkel for so long.
Yeah, I think he's been with Gary Pinkel his entire run, right?
23 years. And then, Brick Haley is a guy a lot of people talked about. Sort of a weird situation for him. Essentially got demoted when they hired Ed Orgeron down at LSU, despite the fact that Brick Haley's been a pretty good coach down there for LSU. So I think he interviewed at Texas recently. That's the other thing, is that there's a chance. Texas just lost their defensive line coach, so OU and Texas are going to be going after probably some of the same people. So this is going to be really that's going to be interesting to follow as well. I don't know what they're going to do with this, but part of me says a guy like Corey Callens, Calvin Thibodeau would be good. It's a guy that these are former players that are good recruiters, that are young, that have a connection to the program and love it. and you also get the feeling like those two guys might stick around a little longer than 2 years. On the other hand, it's Oklahoma, and they feel like they can go out and make another splash home run hire, like a Jerry Montgomery. So, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. But I will, those names I put out there are, well, that was sort of fun to go through and try to find people that I thought might fit. But anybody's guess is as good as mine at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I think Lincoln Riley's name was one that came up really quickly when we were talking about offensive coordinator assistants. But some of the other guys, Dennis Simmons and Kerry Cooks, the other guys they brought in, weren't guys who just flipped off the top of your mind as soon as those positions became open. So you never know what Bob Stoops is going to do, but clearly this is going to be a critical hire for them, not only for next year and trying to build back what they've done, but moving forward as well.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. They've got to they've got to get this one right, because right now, with the way the season went last year, with all the turnover this offseason, and now losing your best recruiter and your possibly your best position coach in some ways. I mean, at least your most promising young position coach. They've got to get this one right. If they don't get this one right and the defensive line takes a step back next year and you don't have very many linebackers, it could be, I mean, it already could be a tough season, but then it could really be bad.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that hire. With that, we're going to cut it short today. Going to be just a quick one. I wanted to talk about Jerry Montgomery and his potential replacements, but you can check us out next week for another full-length edition of the Nonfiction Writers. Until then, check out newsok.com every day and every morning on the Oklahoman for the best OU coverage anywhere.